episode of Nikki Talks Food. So today we're gonna make our version of Hotpie. In the Game of Thrones, Arya Stark meets a little boy named Hotpie. At first, he's kind of a jerk, but then he turns out to be a really sweet kid and he makes this killer pie recipe. It's kind of a traditional meat pie as you would find in any kind of pub. And in their reunion episode, Hotpie says that his secret ingredient is that he browns the butter before he makes the crust. So that's just what we're gonna do today. We're gonna make a steak and Guinness pie with a brown butter crust. All right, so the first thing we have to do is brown our butter. The recipe link will be in the comments. So click in the comments and you'll see the recipe, which will lead you to my website, which leads you to the recipe. So when we brown butter, what's gonna happen is the butter's gonna separate into water, fat, and then milk solids on the top. Eventually, the water's gonna start to cook off and turn into steam, and then the last step will be the butter will brown. So it's gonna have like a rich, nutty taste rather than like a milky taste. It just adds a little extra texture and a little extra umami. Okay, so we have our brown butter, and you can see the color. You have a little bit of sediment, and that is milk solids that have been toasted up, so it's gonna add that Maillard reaction, that umami, the nice savory taste to our pie crust. So the next step that I did was I went ahead and I poured all the butter into a little ice cube tray so that I could pop it out, and I could pop it into my food processor so I can make my crust. But you can see the brown butter specks have sunk to the bottom, and it's gonna make our awesome crust. Okay, so our next step is we're gonna make our pie crust in a food processor. So right now I just have the flour in the food processor, and I'm gonna add, where's my stuff? Oh. And I'm gonna add salt, a little bit of sugar, and my butter. Okay, so we want our butter chunks to end up to be about this size because we want to have a flaky pie crust. This butter was ice cold when it went in so that it stayed kind of intact, and this is called cutting the fat in. So this is gonna make us have a flaky pie crust. Okay, so our next step is we're gonna add ice cold water. I'm gonna add half of this, see if it turns into a dough ball, and then I'll keep adding more until I get a dough ball consistency. Okay, so we got our little dough ball. I'm gonna cut this in half, and I'm just gonna show you what I'm gonna do. All right, so we have 2 discs of dough. These guys need to chill in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes because the glutens need to relax. All right, so while our pie crust is resting, we're gonna make the filling. And the filling is effectively a stew. It's a beef stew. So one of the first mistakes that people do when they're making any kind of protein is they don't dry their protein. So really what you need to do is just get a paper towel, and I usually will set out a piece of aluminum foil, and put the paper towel on top. And every time I make protein, I do this exact same thing, whether it's fish, chicken, beef, doesn't matter. It all goes through the same process. If we don't dry the liquid that is surrounding the meat, what will happen is we'll end up boiling the meat, and it will be kind of like a gray texture. And what we're looking for is a crispy, golden brown texture. So the way that we make the best texture possible is we dry our meat. Next, we're gonna season our meat liberally. So the second big mistake that people make when they're making proteins is they don't wait for their pan to get hot enough. So wait for this guy to start smoking before you add the meat. So what we're gonna do now is called the braising sequence. We're gonna sear our meat, we're gonna remove our meat, we're gonna add our aromatics, we're gonna build a sauce, and then we're gonna cover this guy and let it just stew on its own. So if you learn the braising sequence fundamental, you open the door to be able to make an exponential amount of dishes. Okay, we're smoking now. So we're gonna add this meat. Wanna hear that sound? Wanna hear the sizzle? Okay, so we browned our meat and then we removed it from the pan, and now what we have left over is what's called fond, and I'm gonna spell that right here. Think of fond like foundation, so we don't wanna wash any of this brown stuff out. We wanna build our sauce on top of that. So that's just what we're gonna do. We're gonna add some butter. And the next step we'll do is add our vegetables on top, and that's what's called aromatics. So carrots, onions, celery, and a little bit of garlic, and that is what's gonna make a really beautiful depth of flavor for this dish. So we're gonna scrape up all this stuff from the bottom. And we are going to add our carrots, onions, celery. Garlic we'll add a little bit later because we don't want the garlic to burn. There's nothing worse than burnt garlic taste. Garlic, shrooms, and now it's time to make our sauce. So our thickening agent is flour. So that's gonna make a roux. Now we're gonna deglaze with Guinness and beef stock. And now we have a thick and lovely stew base. Our meat is gonna go right in with all the drippings. And we're gonna cook this for a couple of hours, probably 2 or 3 hours until the meat is falling apart. If you wanted to reduce the time, you could put this filling into your Instant Pot and tighten up the lid, set it for about 20 minutes. Otherwise, if you didn't want to babysit it, you could put it in your crock pot for about 2 hours. The North remembers. All right, so it's time to roll out our bottom pie crust, and what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna clean this pan first. We're gonna blind bake the bottom so that we don't have a soggy bottom. So I'm gonna take one of my discs. Does anybody else think that Jon Snow just does dumb shit? Okay, so now we're going to do what's called docking the crust. So we're going to poke some holes, and what that does is allow air, steam, to come out of the bottom of the crust so that your crust doesn't rise and bubble up and then you can't fill it. So we're gonna use bootleg pie weights. Bootleg pie weights are dry beans. Boom. Save the scraps because that's what we're gonna make our pretty stuff out of. Into the oven this goes. Let's see if this is good enough for the King of the North. It's hot as wildfire. Oh my God. I really do think that the brown butter definitely adds something to this dish. I think I might do all my pie crust this way from now on. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like my show, hit a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell. I want to hear from you guys. If you want to learn something or you got something you want to talk about, please leave a comment.